we want to be the heaviest on inventory in our very best stuff. But typically, if you're not careful, it ends up being the inverse, where your heaviest in weeks of cover and your worst stuff. And so then all your discounting is not as powerful because it's around your worst stuff. Anyway, it's a great concept.
These are things to think about for sure. Especially, I'm not sure what size your catalog is, but like we have teams of people working on this because we have 4,000. I checked it this morning, 4,062 SKUs. Yeah. So keeping that managed and balanced and loaded and ordered properly is quite a daunting task.
Yeah, I think we're at 6,000 or something like that. So it's a very similar.
Someone that can understand our pain.
Oh man, yeah, absolutely. We'll have to talk more about this afterwards.
I have 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how many
3 here. It's like I got a machine, pods, filters, some other shit.
It all started with a rumor, a whisper about a private WhatsApp chat where 9-figure entrepreneurs swapped insights, information, and deals behind closed doors. And now, for the first time ever, these operators are pulling back the curtain on their clandestine world. Right here on this podcast, you're about to witness something truly remarkable. A glimpse into the minds and businesses of the world's most successful operators. So sit back, relax, and stay glued to your headphones. The chat is about to begin.
All right, we got No Sean this week, episode 6. We have our good friend Marty here. Marty's got a weird ass story, although it is super cool. Jason, this is your idea. Do you want to give like a bit of a why Marty, why background? Or Marty, you can just jump in. But for everybody listening,
first I got to say that how much I'm so psyched that Marty is here, Matt. I want you to know this. Marty probably has made Hexclad more money than anyone in our chat, except maybe Sean.
I was going to say that's high praise.
Wow, that's seriously. I mean, Marty is like a straight undercover killer, and he's pretty chill on Twitter. But I mean, and I also remember, and this is going to relate to the Panzerism of the day later, but Marty's just like super giving of his time, and he was the first one to quote to me, "Friends pay full price." So Marty, thank you for being here. I'm super stoked. Like, the reason for doing this podcast was from the chat, right? We all know this. Yep. And there's 11, 12 people in the chat, and everyone is awesome. And it's just great. Like, I want the world to experience Marty.
Oh. It's such a good point, man. Marty is like one of those in the weeds operators. Like, he knows a weird amount of detail about everything. And I'm sure you guys would agree with that. So before we jump in, for everybody watching or listening, we're going to kind of go through like, why is Marty here? What's his business? What's his background? I want to hear about his company. I know you guys too. Like, we know a little bit about his business, but like, I think it'd be super cool for everybody to hear a bit of like, how do you guys work? We're going to talk a bit about like what you call unicorn roles. We want to get into a Panzerism today. And if you're smart and you stick around and listen to the whole thing, we're actually going to talk about leveraging Prime Day, which is coming up. And if you are in this business and you are not doing this, you're a freaking idiot. So you should listen to the whole show today, because we're going to leave that little nugget right to the end. And if we got any bonus topics or time, we can get into the whole agency versus internal shit show that seems to rear its head always on Twitter. With that, Marty, welcome, man. Give us the story, dude.
And thank you, Jason, for the warm welcome. Like, I feel so humbled. Like, you almost made me like blush a little bit there. I feel a little emotional. Yeah, the story. I mean, how far back do you guys want me to go? Do you want to start at Wholesome
Not birth.
Goods? That's 2000. What's that?
Not birth.
Not birth.
No.
Okay, yeah. So, all right. Let's just go back to where I got into the internet space, and that was just like affiliate marketing. So we did affiliate marketing, me and my partner, Charlie, who's now our CFO here at Wholesome Goods. We did that for about 4 or 5 years while dabbling. I mean, it wasn't really called like the agency world back then. It was like, we were just like a studio that did custom websites and iOS apps and stuff like that. And we built some pretty cool brands for some fitness companies, some supplement companies and stuff like that. And, chugging in, I think we were like 8 or 9 years into that business, not very big. I think the biggest we ever got was maybe 6 people. We said to ourselves, like, we got to stop like living paycheck and project to project. Like, let's start building something for ourselves. And we had built some companies that got pretty big for others as clients. And we said, let's just start doing that for ourselves. And that's exactly what we did. So we started out with one skincare company called Aloe Infusion. And then we absorbed a couple others within a year. And then it snowballed quickly, where we brought in some partners that we had knew from the affiliate space that were just, geniuses at media buying, knew everything there was to know about Facebook at the time, traffic sources to Blue, stuff like that, native. And they were just going to be great fits for the company. And we said, we're all kind of working on these independent, separate projects. This makes a lot of sense to kind of do it together. It's kind of a big, different dynamic than you would traditionally see, because at the time it was 5 people, and then we added a 6th as equal partners into a company, which is obviously much larger than you would typically see a group that's managing a role. And we did that in 2017, and we formed Wholesome Goods, and it's been nothing but a rocket ship ever since then. Lots of crazy stories. I mean, however you guys want to get into it.
Marty, can you start with are you buying your brands or do you build them from scratch?
It's a great question. Yeah. So half of the companies or brands that we have right now kind of were projects of the 6 individual partners when we consolidated it. We purchased 3, and then we incubated another 3 or 4 internally from the ground up. And the purchases, these were never like big companies. They weren't, doing a lot of volume. All of them were under $1 million a year. And they were kind of like just distressed assets where people got something going. We kind of liked it. We thought that it had vision. We thought that there was marketability for it. And so we just kind of bought them as asset sales and then turned them into actual brands.
How many brands now? I think.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have actually a cheat sheet here because of how many we have operating right now. It's actually getting hard to keep track of. So there's 12 brands operating right now in 9 countries. Soon to be 12. We're launching 3 more. Yeah.
You've 12 active brands.
12 active brands. Correct.
I have 2 and I want to jump off my fucking roof most days.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. And I try to kind of compare myself and compare notes to stuff you guys are talking about in the chat. And the way that I have to think about the business and the way that we operate things is so different. I hear a lot of figures and facts and stuff like that going around the chat and the conversations. And it's just okay, well, this will apply to half of a segment of our brands, but it doesn't really apply to the others. We have some brands that are LTV based. We have some brands that are just absolutely, profit on first sale up front, that have, very long LTV windows and things like that. So we've got a little bit of everything, a model that's subscription based, et cetera.
So Marty, let me just summarize because it can be sometimes hard to follow. You run Wholesome Goods. You're a 9-figure brand, right? Because you wouldn't be in the chat if you weren't. What are the top 3 things? What are the top 3 selling brands, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I brought some numbers. I know the audience and you guys love a little juicy tidbits of inside information, right? So, Wholesome Goods this year is going to do around 125 to 135 million in revenue. We'll do that at about 10 to 12% EBITDA range, maybe a little bit higher. We had some supply chain wins that are coming in now, but it might take until Q1 of next year to fully develop. The top brands, though, definitely the bedding space. Our Cozy House Collection brand is our biggest by far. And then in second there, we have a group of supplement brands. They're spread out across different regions and countries, but that category is probably our second largest. And then we have a pet brand that is probably our third largest.
And are there, I know we're going to talk, I just this fascinates me, Marty, because we've all watched the Twitter flameouts and the public flameouts of aggregators and the house of brands concept.
Sure.
How much of are these separate teams internally? Do you have a lot of shared resources? How does this all work?
Yeah, no, to tell you the truth, we never consider ourselves aggregators. And when we started Wholesome Goods in 2017, that kind of really wasn't a thing. It was happening at the same time as we were starting it, but we were unaware of these aggregators being built, right? We didn't learn about them until 2019 or 2020. And we've never really considered ourselves to have that business model at all, because we were never, buying brands at EBITDA and leverage. Everything we were doing is 100% bootstrap. That's one important note here, that we've never raised capital. So it's different in a lot of ways. We're not buying brands to scale them on Amazon, and like, let's just be clear there. Like, a lot of these aggregators are for sure Amazon based. They're very heavy in that aspect. Our business breakdown is about 70% direct to consumer, 20% Amazon, and the remaining 10% is Walmart, eBay, Etsy, Faire, etc.
So Marty, tell us a little bit about where are the synergies? I mean, it seems like just everything I've learned from you, one of them is that you have an unbelievable marketing analytics kind of engine behind things, but I'd love to understand, how do you, Matt said it, there's a lot of complexity with being spread in so many different ways. So there's obviously some big synergies that you benefit from. What are those?
Yeah, for sure. So to even answer Matt's question earlier about like how the teams work and is there dedicated teams, there is not. Everything is a shared resource pool. So we have, I think there's 13 different departments in the company. We're about 120 headcount across the globe. 80 of those are in the US and in-house. And we basically, every division is set up a little bit differently, but if you want to talk specifically about marketing and data, the way that we set that up is kind of the unicorn role section, which I think I'm going to go a little bit deeper on a little bit later in the podcast. But yeah, we keep it fresh. We have project management is like super crucial. We have 2 project managers that are just on top of distributing tasks and rotating them and things like that. And then also the work that gets distributed to all the employees in the different departments, like we rotate them by brand. So everyone is familiar with everything. We try to templatize things and blueprint it as much as possible as well, where when we find things that work for one brand, they almost always work for other brands, even if they're in completely different niches or different markets. So we have a lot of in-house technology that is, we call them Wholesome theme and like Wholesome stack. And we download all of our data daily from all of the sources into BigQuery. We have a lot of analytics tools built around that. And yeah, just to keep things fresh, as of yet, we don't have any dedicated teams for any specific brands.
That's unbelievable, man. And what is your, what's your role? So you have 6 partners in the business.
Yes. What
is your role? And what do the rest of them do? How do you guys divide this up?
For sure. It's changed over the years. But my technical right now is CTO, right? Okay. So I'm handling most of the technology. I'm oddly over e-commerce, which is ironic because obviously our whole entire business is e-commerce. But in our company, we talk about e-commerce as like third-party marketplaces. So that's like the Amazon, that's the Walmart, that's the eBay. And then direct-to-consumer stuff is really like in charge by our CMO Laws. And he handles everything that has to do with our Shopify sites, our funnels, our flows, and stuff like that. So we think of those 2 things as pretty separate. Even though we tie a lot of data together in the back end in order to make everything make sense financially, they are managed like completely separately.
And you just said analytics and all this, and I know, we're obviously our sponsors, Northbeam, for this episode. You don't use Northbeam.
I do not.
Tell us, how do you fill that gap, man?
Yeah. No, we're a bit old school in that approach, and I've shared a few of these things with the group before, just some like rudimentary, like old school spreadsheets and stuff that we use. But we've modernized it over the years. But basically, we ingest every single raw piece of data we can from Google Analytics, from all of the places we buy media from. We even have some proprietary tracking that's picking up little pieces that are missing here and there that we can't pull from their APIs. We put it all into BigQuery, and then we stitch it all together. And so we build reports based on our needs and things that our CMO finds most crucial. And those metrics are all over the place. I mean, there's probably 50 KPIs that he keeps track of that he thinks are like some of the most important ones to monitor. And we do our best to just keep up to those demands and make sure that the reporting is up to date as possible.
Jason, Mike,
Marty,
you guys remember the
Marty.
Yeah.
Marty, I'm sending my CIO Jeff on a plane to Tampa to hang out at your office for like 3 days. Because, dude, I didn't even know that you were the CTO. Like, I just know that you fucking do everything. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, we have so many. And going back to the Northbeam thing, like, I personally can't live without Northbeam. Because really, that's just like my dashboard. There's a lot more that I need as a business. I love for him to talk to you about that. But we're very heavy. We have a huge spend, right? I think we probably, I don't know who spends more than us, other than maybe Sean. And we're spending across so many channels that the attribution side, like the math, like the models, I don't know why anyone would want to build that piece. I'm guessing that the math and the models aren't as important to you today, and that's kind of what makes it different. But yeah, Jeff is getting on a plane to Tampa very soon, and dinner at Columbia is on me.
I think Jason, though, like Mike, I know you've brought this up in the past, but it actually sounds like they've got such a strong technical core competency as founders that they're comfortable with some of this stuff, right? So like they can get their heads around it, they can build stuff like that.
It's almost to a fault, honestly. Like it probably would have been easier to do some things off the shelf, but we had such specific things that we wanted that weren't available at the time. I mean, when we were building most of this technology, it was like 2019, 2020. Yeah. Like these guys, the Northbeams were not around. And we needed to know attribution then and there because, we needed solutions that kept us profitable. And we didn't have money to burn. We didn't have time to burn. We had, mouths to feed. We were growing rapidly and we needed to know our numbers and they needed to be precise. So in order to maintain that growth, we just had to build the plane as it was flying.
I think that's a great point that, my start in e-commerce was in 2009, and similar to Marty, it goes pretty far back. And I mean, this goes back to like AWS isn't a thing. We had to buy cages and own the servers in the cage, and attribution. It was literally like, hey, there are no solutions, right? We're just building everything internally. And so sometimes you'll see that from the people who've been in the industry for a while, is that they've just had to develop out of necessity their own way of doing things that they're comfortable with and works for them. And so like you said, Marty, maybe sometimes to our detriment, but I'm the exact same way. I have systems and processes that I use that, I probably wouldn't have come up with them if I had started eCom in 2019, but because I started it in 2009, it's just the way that I do things and I'm comfortable with it and I'm fast at it. And so you just kind of find what works and move with it. But one of the things that, Marty, I think I've taken from being around you is the way that you find KPIs that matter and you really laser focus on them and how do we grow them over an extended period of time. Like one of the examples that I showed my entire team here that I think was you posted like a revenue per page visit metric. Yeah. This might've been like a year ago. And you showed how over like a 36-month period, how you have just like doubled that number or something, like in a very kind of steady and measured way. You had just grinded and grinded and grinded. And sure enough, when you look at your page, you look at your product detail page, you can see all of the little things that you've unlocked and the way that it's gradually turned into this unbelievably high monetizing page. And I really admire that. I mean, I feel like it's an underrated skill of being able to laser focus on something and over time learn and apply that to grow results. I'd love to hear your thoughts about how you use the technical skills you have to drive business results that way.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, I wish I could take credit for a lot of that, but I came from design and coding. And so a lot of what you're talking about right there, as far as like growing the EPV and the incremental stuff over the years, that all came from our CMO Laws. And me and him butted heads back and forth about this isn't pretty, but he's like, it's better, So, Jason posted the other day in the chat something about incremental testing, and he was looking at some platforms and stuff like that.
Incrementality.
And this phrase was like kind of new to me, and I started Googling it and I was like, well, maybe they're talking about something different or deeper than what I'm thinking off the top of my head. And then after I started researching some of these platforms and the tools that Jason was talking about, I was like, oh, this is what Laws has been forcing me to do for 5 years. And so it was pretty interesting because, I, in the very beginning, like I wanted everything to look very polished. I wanted things to look very clean. We were looking up to all the big brands, that were running off Red Antler and all these big agencies that had these incredible experiences. And, my CMO was just like, yeah, it looks good, but, it converts like shit. So like, we're going to change these things one by one until they're done. And I always found it super frustrating because like I would design, this brand new product display page that looked incredible. The color scheme was great. Everything I thought was just like perfect to the T. And he's just like, no, like I'm going to let you change one thing a week. And your rollout plan that you want to take from this page to this page is going to take a year. And I'm just like banging my head up against a wall. And I'm just like, oh, like I wish this could be live now. I wish this could look better. Like I want to have like this, super polished brand. But he was absolutely right 100%. Conversion rate comes first, customer experience, like removing any hurdles, removing any resistance from the consumer's checkout experience is key, and presenting additional value, like, having upsells in the right place, knowing when to hit those pressure points, knowing when the psychological triggers are there. Me and him even today will like argue about things of like where an upsell should be, whether it should be post checkout or whether it should be pre-checkout. And, I am wrong, and I'll admit it, like 80% of the time when it comes to these decisions. And I'm just like, no, this would do much better if we were upsell this product, on an add to cart click or on a checkout click. And he's like, no. He's like, the buyer is not ready to spend an extra $40 until their credit card's been hit one time. And then they're like, okay, I'll do another $40 now. And it has to be post-purchase one click, or otherwise it's not going to work. And
this is Jason. This is what you're talking about, man. Marty, like the level of detail that you get into is nuts, man. Like I remember in the chat, you dropped your daily paid sheet. It was like every single day you guys record like dozens of numbers, and so like, and I don't know if Mike and Jason, you guys do this, but my head of growth now, he likes to manually put the numbers in to these sheets every week.
Yes.
He's like, it makes it feel real. Like my data scientist, Lonnie, she's like, I can automate this shit. And he's like, no. I want to get them put in. I want everybody to feel these numbers when we put them in, good or bad. Right. So like, that little thing that you did, I'm like, man, that changed how we looked at analytics. Like I'm a software engineer. I want to automate everything.
I trust Northbeam because I know the rigor of their analytics. Like they don't compromise. They don't cut corners. And having come from a finance background and being a numbers guy, I know that all models are wrong, but theirs is going to be the least wrong because of that level of rigor. It's like there's a trust when you're dealing with something with a model, the math behind it, the rigor, there's like a million shortcuts that can be taken. I know them for a long time, and that's why I trust that they're putting the level of analytics. It's like Hexclad releasing a new product. We're just not going to do it unless it's great, unless it's innovative, unless it's special. And that's the approach over at Northbeam. So that's why we really, really trust the platform.
You are wasting a fuck ton of money by not using Northbeam. That's my totally unbiased opinion about this, is that, we'll spend $1 million on Twitter this quarter. I only feel comfortable doing that because of what Northbeam tells me, right? I can apples to apples compare inside of Northbeam, a Twitter click versus a Facebook click, right? I can see the value, how it changes over 5 days, 7 days. We look at 1 day click. That's kind of like our whole thing. But because other people look in platform, like of course Facebook's going to fucking tell you it's the best driver of traffic, and so is Google, and so is everybody else, right? So you need a source of truth for your business.
When you have a vision for something and you think this is what would look best, this would be great, and that personality type can really conflict with like the data-driven, conversion-driven personality in your organization. And a lot of times can just kind of dig their heels in based on ideology or like, this is my vision. And I think, I talk to brand owners all the time where they're struggling to get traction, but there's this really high control. Like it has to look like this, and this is the way the brand has to be presented. And I feel like one of the things that I have to tell them is like, nobody's looking at your brand right now. You don't have to worry about testing or trying things or throwing things against the wall. Nobody, you're hitting so few nominal people But because it becomes their kind of, it's their vision, and they're so worried that a single person would see something that doesn't look the way they want it to look, it prevents them from scaling, prevents them from doing the testing, prevents them from trusting the data. And I just wanted to say it's a strength when somebody like you, who is very creative minded, has a strong point of view, is actually able to partner with somebody that has a strong quantitative, let's test point of view. I feel like those are the best partnerships, but it requires actually quite a bit of self-confidence and kind of, willingness to pursue what's best for the business over just what you want to see personally. So I noticed that in what you said. It's not surprising that you and your CMO have been a great partnership, but it starts with that willingness to trust some of his perspectives.
Jason, do you have that at HexCloud? Do you have somebody where there's like a really healthy abrasion? Like this creative abrasion? Because that's like, there's a self-awareness, Marty, that like, kudos to you, man, for having that, like to be able to do that. That's not even confidence. That's like knowing this guy's really good at this, better than I am. I'm happy to have the argument, but like,
he proved me wrong too many times,
right? Like, Jason, I'm curious, like between you and Danny, or like you and, is there other people in your company where like you just have a healthy abrasion?
Man, healthy abrasion.
Or unhealthy.
Danny and Cole, Cole is the other co-founder of HexCloud, who's incredibly strategic, but he's not like really in the day-to-day anymore. He and Danny really got the business to the like first 30 million. Those two guys fight like crazy, and they love each other so much. I think we all, all three of us, we have a very healthy friend / work relationship. It sounds like what Marty has with his partners. There's always bumps in the road. I'm stepping on Danny's toes about something, or it's just, but we work really well together, and it's just, at the end of the day, it's like fun. It's got to be fun. All of us have reached a certain level of success in our lives, and I'm very grateful that with the internal conflict, it's really still a lot of fun. Like we laugh all day. Well, the first 5 minutes of every meeting is Danny cracking jokes. Like is really that part of it is why we have this chemistry here at HexCloud. Actually, we have a culture here at HexCloud, and me, I don't get into the touchy feely soft stuff. Although I'm going to a little bit today with the Panzerism, but I think that's what Marty and the team have over there.
Yeah, one of the reasons. Sorry, Matt. Well, I was just going to say, one of the reasons why it's so important to be data centric is because it actually helps have interpersonal relationships that are healthy. So let's say that Jason and I are working together and we just have a real difference of opinion about a subject, right? Unless there is something that we can both look at that's objective to test, then it's just one of us is going to win. It's just kind of a battle royale to which of us is going to get our way. And, we do it. And there's not even the counterfactual of what's that the right way to do it. And, one of us could walk away feeling resented or like our voice wasn't heard. But when you have a culture of being really data centric and testing, then we can have different opinions and say, well, you know what, who knows? Let's test. One of the things that my brother said that has stuck with me a long time, he would always say, we don't know what's best. That's why we test. And it's really what you're saying, Marty. Even those of us who have been around e-commerce for a really long time and think we're really smart, if you show us a split test and say which one's going to do better, often we get it wrong. Probably more often than we get it right. It's amazing that like no matter how much data you look at, that you can easily still not perceive the micro differences that cause a consumer to act differently. And so you create a culture of testing and a culture of humility where, hey, when we have a difference of opinion, okay, let's test. This is a noble answer. It's test. Let's go to the data. And then it's not me having to shout louder than you or pull rank on you or whatever. So like kind of you were saying, Jason, you can have that healthy environment where, yeah, like, hey, we can disagree, but ultimately we're going to take it to the judges, which is the customer. We're going to test. And then we can kind of amicably move forward, even if my thing didn't win because, the customers voted.
Yeah, great culture, great data is like the two pieces that you guys are all talking about, right? It's
for sure. And I don't know about you guys, but like that ideology of data leads everything and data leads decisions has bled throughout our company, because our COO, Alma, she's really into that decision-making style as a whole. And so, she has two kind of rules when she hires someone here at Wholesome Goods. And it's number one is that no assholes are allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly is that data does drive every decision. So you have to admit that you're wrong if another person can prove with facts that it's better.
Yeah. The nice thing when you do that too, and we do the same, but I think like all great companies tend to have like the no asshole rule. They tend to have like when we go through our interview process, we're looking for people who actually like disagreement. They like conflict, right? They're attracted to it, but they're attracted to it in a way that we're like, they beat the problem up, not the person. And that's why, when you bring data, you're not beating people up, and you shouldn't do that anyway. Like that's just wrong. But like when you go to numbers, it matters. I think the other thing that's really important here is when you're a smaller brand, so like when you're chasing your first 5 million, 10 million, 20 million in sales, bigger swings are required. Like you can't 1% win your way to $5 million in revenue, but as you scale to like what you're talking about, what Jason does, what Mike does, what we do, like those 1% wins start to add up, man. Right. And that's like Absolutely. That incremental thinking and like move the ball forward a little bit at a time. At the end of the year, you look back, you're like, holy shit, we grew substantially. And it's
a great point. Marty, I think you were the one that was working on getting your logo in the email. Maybe that was you, maybe somebody else. And it's like, that's a great example. At a certain scale, everything makes sense, right? At a certain scale, you're sending 500 million emails a year. Well, yeah, that logo might not produce a huge bump, but it produces a 0.0 whatever percent bump. And that is nominally material at that scale. If you're a $2 million brand, it's a vanity thing, right? You're doing it for you more than anything else because it's not going to meaningfully move your numbers. And I think that that's one of the pieces of wisdom I've learned through operating several different companies is understanding when you're at a scale where certain things are worth, the juice is worth the squeeze on different activities that you can apply yourself towards.
Marty, do you mind breaking down? I want to jump into this unicorn roll thing. I've never heard that term before. Sure. Not really. And then I want to get Jason. I think that might dovetail nicely into the Panzerism. Does that work?
Go, Marty.
Let's do that.
All right, let's do it. Yeah. So I'm going to bring one example. We do this throughout multiple parts of the company, but I'm going to bring one that I think is going to apply to not only your companies, but a lot of the people who are listening. And this unicorn role is the media buyer, right? This is the person who is a very rare resource. They're very scarce. They're very expensive. They usually work on their terms. It's a difficult position to hire for. And what our CMO did was absolutely genius. He deconstructed this role into two departments, right? So we have one side who is our ad ops, and these guys just know Facebook's interface, Meta's interface, Instagram. They know Google inside and out, PPC wise. And then we have a section called pods, right? And these are our creative department. So we have a studio. We have a 5,000 square foot studio that was built by some HSN people. They got rid of. They moved to something bigger. And what we do is it's composed of two people each pod, right? So it's a content writer, and then it's a creative, someone who's like a designer or a video editor. And it's their job to come up with roughly 2 brand new creatives every single month that are like high quality creative shoots. And then they also create static content throughout that. But then we've developed a system where basically we have right now, I think there's 6 pods operational, and our 7th is going to be going live pretty soon. These groups of people, but we still have only, in our ad ops, it's only about 2 or 3 people. So they don't scale together. You can have a lot of pods. I'd say like with 2 or 3, engineers, ad ops engineers, you could probably have like 10 to 12 pods per that group, right? So it deconstructs it in a really nice way where you can bring in someone entry level, fresh out of college, who just has a graphic design or a media degree, and they know how to edit videos, they know how to edit photos. And you can bring in a content writer who, has maybe a little bit of experience, or maybe they're still just getting started as well, but they have some good ideas, they have some good hooks, they have some good angles and stuff like that. And they will feed this content into the ad ops team, and they will say, here's all of our creatives for the month. Let's run it. You have target goals. So every brand has a ROAS goal that they have to hit. And then what we'll do is 30 days later, through all of our data analytics and processing, we give them back something called the pod dashboard. And what they can do is they can view on a weekly basis how their creatives were doing throughout time across different platforms, across different segments, at different sizes, 16 by 9, 1 by 1, whatever, what platform it was. And then we've put in some KPIs, and we've kind of fine-tuned it to give them some really, unique insights of like, okay, well, you had a really good click-through rate, but your thumb stop rate on Facebook was bad, right? Or, you had a pretty good click-through or CPC, but your earnings per view on it was pretty bad. And then, so if it's a video, it'll have like a linear timeline of exactly where these things and these problems in the video are happening. And so while they're doing 2 new creative videos a week or a month rather per pod, they're doing rehashes of content they did the prior month and the prior month, right? So they'll get back a report that says, okay, this video is doing 1.6 ROAS. It really needs to do 1.8 in order for it to be like a really successful one for this brand. And so we'll give them back the report that they can view whenever they want on a weekly basis. That's when the data gets refreshed. And they could say like, okay, well, we fixed this area where people stopped watching after 7 seconds, but then the hook isn't working correctly at 15 seconds. We're getting a drop off there. So then they'll go back and they'll retweak that and they'll re-upload it to the media team. And so it's a flywheel cycle of creative content being produced by the studio that goes into the DevOps. These guys just need to know how to make sure that they keep the campaigns running, the bids optimized, make sure the placements and everything are good, make sure if anything gets flagged, they get it fixed. And then they just feed that data straight back to the pod teams themselves. And it takes the essence of what makes a great media buyer, a single individual, and it breaks it into 2 separate components and 2 separate teams that don't need to know everything to make a great individual. And it allows you to really scale it.
That's ridiculous. That's just ridiculous.
That's genius.
That's so ridiculously good and smart. Like I can't. That's the problem with Marty, is that every time I talk to him, I feel like we're so bad at what we do. It's ridiculous.
Listen, I would love to take credit for all of this, but you have to understand there's 6 people behind this, plus
but you guys all built it together.
Employees that are building these tools.
Yeah. You're completely de-risking like things that, as operators that like, I don't know, I'm sure you guys do, but like there are key people in a company you just don't want to lose. Mm-hmm. There's certain roles that are hard to hire. And when you get one, you're like, shit, I don't want to lose this person. You're basically saying like, take those really important roles and pull them apart and then build systems to replace the important role. And that actually, number one, it creates leverage, but I think more importantly, it's like you sleep better at night because you're de-risking the role.
And like Matt, the reason why those people are so hard to find is usually it's a combination of disparate skill sets. Yeah. It's like, okay, this skill set isn't particularly rare and this skill set isn't particularly rare, but these 2 skill sets together, that's rare. So if you peel it apart, all of a sudden, like the candidate pool of people who could do that with excellence as a pod is much bigger.
Marty, it's brilliant. It really is. Like it almost sounds obvious when you say it, that like everybody should do this. I always look at business models that way, right? It's like the best businesses typically combine things that have never been combined before, and that creates defensibility. You're taking like, what to Mike's point, people. So like these skill sets, when you combine them, they become very valuable in the marketplace. So like, how do you break through that moat? Well, you just rip them apart into their constituent components, and then you make the company build a better system.
Right. And, I think that's one of our big differentiators when it comes to direct to consumer, because so many direct to consumer brands, and I think Sean has even said this on Twitter or on the podcast before, it's like, it's basically the media buyer and the CMO, and then everything else around it is just operations around what they're doing. Yep. Right. So if you can, remove yourself from the risk of having that central role, that unicorn person, and you can scale it up and down as you need and as you see fit as a business, it's just such a good win.
Dude, I off this, I want to talk to you more about this. Cause like, it's still like for me I still spend so much time on creative and like performance marketing. Like it's the place I deploy the majority of my hours.
This is why we're going to do the Big Dog Summit, Matt. This is why we need to do the summit. We need to really,
we need like a deeper,
a 4-day summit meeting.
My brain's going to fucking bleed, man. 4 days.
That's There's just so much to get through.
We'll do it someplace nice. I mean, one of the things that's cool about the chat, it's cool about the chat that really, I would say each of the companies in the chat has been kind of world-class in a different area of focus. There's overlap certainly, but that's been one of the things that I've taken away from it is there's so many different ways to be world-class as an organization through a particular area of focus. And it's one of the reasons I love spending time with you guys is that I get stretched and challenged in areas where I feel really average all the time.
Yep. It's wonderful. I love it. I feel inept most days and it's great.
Yeah. The chat's been absolutely a game changer for me, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I probably spend too much time in there and on Twitter, but I've learned so much. So
it's so like feast or famine. It'll be like nobody says anything for a couple of days, and then I had to mute the notifications because like somebody will pop off with an idea. And all of a sudden there's like 160 text messages. And I learned like, I've got to have this thing muted or I'm going to get blown up anytime somebody starts an interesting discussion. Cause it just goes bananas for like a couple hours. And like you said, there's just so much information in there that I want to process and think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Jason and I are on the West Coast and I can tell when Marty and Roman are chatting because you're in a completely different time zone. And it's like my phone is fucking buzzing on my bedside table. I'm like, no, they're awake. That's great. Jason, do you want to, I don't know if you guys want to add more to this, but Jason, I want to hear the Panzerism today. Cause that usually also gets me.
Yeah. We're going to make it quick today. The Panzerism's going to be quick. Dude, I'm wiped. It was a crazy week. Like last week. I went to, my son graduated from the University of Miami. I flew out there Thursday night, was there, got totally hammered with him and his friends on Friday night and was hungover until Sunday. And then Sunday night flew to Austin for 2 days to do some stuff with JP Morgan. That's where we recorded the last pod. And then came to LA for a day, went to VCon, Gary Vaynerchuk's thing in Lucas Oil Stadium for 2 days. That was super fun. But I'd made a commitment to be back in LA on Saturday, the 20th, for the GeekX thing that Nick Shackelford runs. And I really wanted to be there for him because I committed to doing it, right? And this is where the Panzerism comes in. And it also relates back to Marty. It's a little touchy-feely, this one, Matt. I went hard a little bit last time.
I'm bracing myself, dude.
This is more touchy-feely. This is just out of character. You need to build a bank of favors. Okay. Like you need to give 10 favors for every one that you ask for minimum. And I cannot tell you how valuable this philosophy has been to me over the years. And so this is just sort of like my life hack kind of Panzerism today. You guys know I'm not super touchy-feely. I was an investment banker and a corporate lawyer and got my ass handed to me for years. And I think about actually the very first conversation I had with Marty was before I was even in the chat. And it was something about Amazon. I just had some questions like, yeah, let's hop on a call. And we were talking and then like he went and bought some HexCloud. I was going to send him something. It's like, no. Friends pay full price. And I'll never forget that. And just, I also, on the other hand, I remember there's a guy who I used to spend time with years ago, and he was always calling me up. He's like, hey man, hey Jay, I got to call in a favor. I'm like, dude, you're calling in a favor for the 10th time. Like I've never asked you for anything. And like I always give them, but I like killed myself for the last week and a half and flew back to LA on my birthday by the way, it was really great. And it was Sean and Nick Sharma and Isaac from Mini Katana. And we did a little panel toward the end. And I'm like, oh man, like everyone's going to leave because it's the end of the day. And this is going to suck. And they rented out the entire Hollywood Improv. And everyone stayed. And we had a really awesome chat. And at the end, 150 people sung happy birthday to me.
No shit.
Wow.
And that's awesome.
I was so embarrassed. And I don't deserve it, but this was like kind of like the culmination of like for the last 3 years that I've been in e-com, just like talking to people, doing whatever, trying to be selfless. So I had this, I wanted to do this one today because Marty's here, and it is really the same thing with the chat, right? Mike is very giving of anything in the chat. I remember Sean was talking about doing an influencer deal, a big deal, and I just gave him like the docs that we have with our biggest guy, right?
Dude,
like I just sent them to him, like, here they are. And now we have a problem with Facebook right now where someone is hacking accounts and running scam hexclad giveaway ads. Dude, it's insane. And we pull them down and there's like hundreds of them.
Jesus.
And people are paying $9.99 to enter into some contest to win a free set of hexclad. And we keep pulling them down and they keep coming up, pulling them down, they keep coming up. So Sean just emailed his rep, right? Like right away. And whenever something comes up, Sean is like, Jason's an ally, whatever it is. I talked to his customer service people, Jeremy the other day. We talked to him, like every time we're trying to solve a problem. And that's what's great about this group. Everyone just gives. So create a bank of favors and you will really make millions off of that long term.
It's unbelievable why, does this not shock? I guess, like, I don't understand why people aren't more generous. Like, it's such a life hack. Just be generous. It will come back. Like, it's not a hard concept to understand. Like, I always agree with your Panzerism, Jason, but that's a really freaking good one. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think that what I've kind of learned is be generous to people, treat them the way you'd want to be treated, expect nothing back. And like you said, Jason, like, then you never end up ever. I mean, I really don't want to be in a position where I have to ask for favors, but I certainly want to be in the kind of person that gives a lot more than he asks for. And I think it speaks to something bigger. I was talking yesterday with one of our executive members about this, that I really actually don't think business is that complicated. I think we overcomplicate it. It's just that people don't like what it requires, right? Like, businesses serve customers, work with people in a way where you treat them well and where they want to be around you, and work at something for a very long period of time with focus, and don't be selfish and don't get impatient. And, it's just these basic principles. And it's like, if you will do these things, you can build something really valuable and you can do really well. But everybody wants the hack, right? Of like, well, no. How do I do it in 18 months? And how do I get to where I can buy, a 9-figure house? And how do I and it's like, well, there's no real shortcuts, right? Fundamentally, as people, we want to be reciprocal. When people treat us well, like when we learn from people, when people are generous towards us, when people help us, immediately where our mind goes is, I want to do something for them. I want to help them back. And I'm drawn to that person. I'm rooting for that person. And the same is true of our customers. When we do well by our customers, they're like, hey, I want to give you my money. I want to vote for you in every way that I possibly can. And that's the part of the Twitter sphere that drives me crazy. Hey, let's spin up a drop shipping business on TikTok. It's always chasing the latest get rich quick, the latest, here's this hack I found in Ads Manager that, I'm hitting this great ROAS. It's like, it can be so distracting, and it can be people chasing things that are not the way to do it. And certainly not the way to build something that has any kind of lasting value. I really think it starts with what you're talking about, Jason. It starts with how you treat other people and your view towards other people. That I'm going to treat other people well. I'm going to be generous with other people. I'm going to care for other people because it's the right thing to do. And I'm not going to make it where I have to draw a straight line from that to how I benefit. I'm just going to believe it's the right thing to do and that things are going to go well when I treat other people that way. And sure enough, they do.
Yeah. It's, what makes me think of, like, I believe firmly in this, but I also, like, if you zoom it out, one of my beliefs is that the key to success is simply calendar time and a list of simple principles that you live and operate by. So if you're willing to put in the calendar time, because none of this shit is quick, and you have a like, here are the principles in which I operate, and I can bring those into a company, and I can get other people that we all agree on, like, this is how we're going to behave. And then I can go and I can build a network that shares those principles. That is literally it. It's not more complicated than that.
I'll tell you one thing, Marty, that, even though you and I haven't spent a lot of time together, I know something about you without knowing you all that well. And you know what I know? I know a lot about your character and who you are as a person because you have 6 partners that are actively involved in the business. And that requires a certain type of person. Like, one principle that I have when I'm thinking about a job applicant or I'm trying to evaluate somebody, I want to know how long standing are their close friendships, right? Like, if they're younger, like, how long have you been a roommate with somebody? Like, what's your track record with people? And sure enough, you will meet people that are really gifted, but they just seem to chew through relationships, right? It's like, oh, I was really close with that person, and then this happened. Then I was really close here, and then that happened. That was really close. The people that you want to spend your time with are the people that really have a track record of having great partnerships, great friendships, great relationships. And that comes from treating people the way that we're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is good, man. Good. Jason, I love it. You've got a heart. It's not made of steel.
Don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anybody. It's a secret. Okay. I like, we've got a bit of time here. Do you guys want to do Prime Day or agency versus internal?
Wait, what were you talking about? Gamers, Matt. What was this gamers thing?
Oh, sorry.
Gamer thing. That's a good topic.
I'll try to keep it short so we can hit Prime stuff as well. I think that's Jason, I think, had a pretty big win off that last year, and maybe a few other people. So I want to mention it. But so I mean, it's been kind of one of our philosophies, and really it just comes from the culture of the partners. I mean, we're all just like nerds, right? We all like still play video games. Me and my CFO and my CMO, we still play video games together today. Even Alma gets involved from time to time. And it's really taught us a valuable lesson about some of the people that we hire and some of the questions that we ask in that interviewing process, and getting to know them and why it is actually a really good reason to hire gamers. I'm not saying like exclusively go out and look for these type of people, but they tend to have good character traits, and they tend to have information kind of easily accessible. And just spending a little bit of time with them, you can learn a lot. So like I wrote down just like a few things that you can learn, spending 2 hours with someone who's maybe like a candidate, or maybe like during the first 90 days, you play a couple games with them or whatever, right? So you're going to see things like how they manage themselves in different situations. Like, do they prefer playing alone? Are they playing with the team? What are their communication skills like? Like right from the bat, like, are they making comms? Are they being completely quiet? Or like they not listening to what everyone else is saying? How do they react to winning a game or defeat? Are they like the rage quit, like, oh, this is bullshit, slam their keyboard, throw their headset down? Or are they like, oh, that was a good game, like, we'll do better next time? Like, you can really learn so much about someone's personality from the way that they play video games within 2 hours, I think, is all the time that you need. And that will tell you right away, like, whether they're going to be a good fit for your culture.
That's an interesting take, man. We typically hire for people who have they either played a competitive sport or like an instrument, like something that they've shown that they've got dedication and passion to, and that there's like some amount of competitiveness. I think
those go hand in hand with what I was just saying about video games. I mean, it doesn't have to be specifically video games, but competitive sports like that.
Hang on. What you're hitting on, I think, is because like I'm a gamer, and the thing with gaming, and why I think it really speaks to character, is it's a lot of the times it's anonymous. So with like in sports, you can't. It's harder to be an asshole. Like, you're face to face with someone. Yeah, right. Like, sure. I'm going to see this person again. In gaming, you're talking complete strangers a lot of the time, and you have a handle. So like, you can behave however the hell you want.
Right.
When there's not as much down. It's like the internet. Like, you can just go and scream into a pillow and nobody gives a shit, because like, they don't know who you are.
For sure. Yeah. So you get to see a lot of that really quickly. And a second side benefit of that is that generally gamers are very proficient with computers. Yeah. Like, PC gamers, you get them around, they know their way around a mouse and keyboard just better than anyone else, right? They know their way around Excel for some reason better than everyone else. Like, it's just the time that they spend, the dedication to the craft of just having fun and working at the same time. They just tend to be really, really technical, which
we have one of those. So Marty, you're gonna love this. We have this kid, Mateo. Okay, he's a friend of, he's like son of a friend of mine. During the pandemic, he didn't want to go back to college or whatever because college wasn't any fun during the pandemic. And his dad came to me. He's like, can Mateo? You have a job for him? And we put him in the warehouse. He was terrible. He was so terrible in the warehouse, right? But he's like one of these crazy gamer kids. And then we put him in customer service, and he wasn't very good either. But somehow Niles, my chief of staff, who's like a former banker like me, I talk about him all the time because he's incredible. Niles was like, I can use Mateo to do some stuff, right? Mateo is now like crushing here. He is crunching numbers for Niles, doing everything like demand planning. Like the kid you put him in front of a computer and like it's incredible. Like I never thought of that. I never associated the gamer piece to this until just now when you mentioned that, Marty. I'm going to find some more gamers.
It's a good story.
A couple of things I've noticed. I mean, one, Marty, you kind of touched on. I mentioned this on Twitter. Actually had somebody bring this up to me today. What we look for in candidates is that they have been excellent, like top 1% at something, right? Like if you want to hire somebody and you want to believe that they're going to be excellent, they have to have some data point from their background of being excellent, or they're not going to be, right? Like excellent people, they find things that they really drive after, and gaming provides actually a pretty clear way to evaluate whether somebody can be really excellent at something. It's interesting, with FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, he liked to play League of Legends, and this was like this whole thing. And somebody made this comment on Twitter. I thought it was great. They said, really the most remarkable thing about Sam playing League of Legends is he only got to this rank, and that is not very good. Like that is not actually consistent with a very high functioning individual. Like it was a red flag. If you knew enough about League of Legends to understand what that rank meant, you knew like this like narrative that he is some just uber genius is probably wrong, because he probably would be better at the game than that. But the second thing, and I think this is, this is pretty significant, is when I was a kid, I played like Nintendo, 8-bit, Ninja Gaiden. And so it was a lot about, we'll say eye-hand coordination, right? Mm-hmm. And reaction time. But that's not what gaming is today. This generation of gaming is about playing things like, there's people that kind of grew up on StarCraft and playing multiplayer StarCraft. And now everything's online. But what it does is it's these highly dynamic environments. It's about you learn principles, you learn a skill set, and then you get thrown into a highly dynamic environment where you don't know what everybody else is going to do. And you have to problem solve on the fly and come up with strategies and work problems on the fly. And that's an amazing, teamwork. It's an amazing
be a good
skill
competitive
set.
gamer in the last 5 years unless you are really good at working on a team.
Yep.
That's right.
A single player could be dominating, dropping, 40, 50 frags or whatever the game is they might be playing, right? Which is like, 4 times higher than their next closest teammate. And they will still lose the game because it's not about individual performance. It's about teamwork. And so you need to have that aspect, and you need to appreciate it. Otherwise you will never rise to the ranks of the best gamers.
I love this. This is for everybody listening. Your hiring hack is that gaming is a proxy for capacity.
It really is.
And problem solving. Yeah, I think the ability, and I liked what you said, Jason, because I think this is also worth saying. Too often we label people as being, that they're good, or they're not as good. They're a top performer. They're not. It's so contextual, right? Like there's a lot of things you could put me in where I would be exceptionally average, I bet. And then there's a few things where I can be exceptional. And that's really true for most of us, right? And it's true it's true even a lot of the people that we would hire. You had an example of somebody where like, you stick him in the warehouse, you stick him in customer support, he's not going to be very good, but you put him in a role where he's able to leverage all these skills that he's developed as a gamer, and all of a sudden he's an all-star, right? And so that's one of the keys of being a good leader, I think, is that you look at people and you really discern, hey, what are their skills? What are they good at? And helping them be put in a situation where they can be their best self.
Absolutely.
All right, boys, let's get into this. Let's get into the deep end, Matt, because we're running late, and I have a meeting
finish on
in
this
14 minutes.
14 minutes, okay.
We have less.
Marty.
I have much less than that. We got to get this going. So we're gonna do. So Mike, were you here when Sean did the deep end, and I had nothing good last time?
No, I have not done. I've not been a part of a deep end segment, so I'm excited.
So mine's like super easy. So the whole idea of the deep end was, we're gonna each give a nugget toward the end that it's a good one, right? It's special, but it's a small one. We're gonna do Marty's is gonna be the prime stuff. Mine's gonna be like super simple. And last time, like they put me on the spot, Mike, and I whiffed. So don't feel bad. Like you can sit this one out if you want.
Let me go last. I only ask that I get to go last and see you guys do it first.
All right. I'm just gonna hit it. So we and because I'm like the ex-banker deal guy on this, I'm gonna try to keep my deep end stuff related to deals because I think people like talking about deals and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know what the easiest way to kill a deal is? Matt, you might know. What's the easiest way? What's the best way to kill a deal? You don't want to kill the deal, but you will kill the deal. What's the best way?
My gut says momentum, like lose momentum, but I don't know.
Well, we're talking about, let me be more specific. We're talking about like an M&A transaction or a cap raise. Okay. I'm going to save us all a bunch of time. Miss your numbers. Miss your numbers. I mean, it's so simple, right? But like, it's amazing how often I used to see that. And there were some bankers who they would like, the hockey stick, right? Everyone wants the hockey stick. And there were like two kinds of bankers. The ones that were just like, they would just go with the hockey stick knowing it was going to get missed. And they just fight and try to get a deal. But those were kind of like the guys, they're just swinging for the fences and they never hit singles or doubles. I was always like, let's craft a set of numbers that we really think we're going to hit. Like they're not crazy. It goes back to the like take the fucking money from last time and just don't be greedy. But it's just I've seen it time and time again. I think there are a lot of people who listen to this pod who might want to raise money, might want to sell their business at some point. Don't miss your numbers. Like whatever number, show people numbers that you were really confident that you were going to hit. And it's incredible how often that has happened. Matt, don't you must know this.
I thought like it must be more complicated than that because that's like the table stakes thing when you're going through a cap raise or a sale. Like a sale of my last company, we were a strategic acquisition when I sold my first company, and they still cared about the numbers, right? And I don't know. So if we're venture backed, I think I'm. All of us, like I'm the venture backed guy, but one trick that we've just always had is like I've got an external forecast and I have an internal forecast, right? And I sandbag my external, man, and I'm like I don't like putting out big aggressive numbers. It's fucking stupid. It's just like, and if somebody challenges me and says like, well, shouldn't you be growing faster? And I said, yeah, sure, give me the money. That's your job.
What do you say, Mike? Are you going in the deep end, or should we let Marty do Prime Day?
Let's do Marty, and then I've got one queued up.
All right, so Prime Day. I mean, this one is probably going to seem obvious at first. I think that a lot of brands aren't capitalizing on this, and I mentioned it last year. I think the chat started just before maybe Prime Day last year, maybe a little bit. And yeah, so Prime Day in America has basically become a consumer holiday that is outside of Amazon, and people don't really realize that. And I pulled up some statistics to like kind of compare it and scale it to what like it is compared to like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and things like that. But a lot of direct consumer businesses just aren't capturing that societal flow of ready to spend money persons that are just ready to part ways with money for your product. And, a lot of people spend time on, you're like, oh, it's Prime Day. Like we're going to focus on these really, blockbuster deals on Amazon Prime itself. We're going to go really, really aggressive on discounting and things like that, try to move the most amount of units. Whereas we take a little bit of a different approach. Obviously, Amazon's not as big of a business for us as it is for some other companies. But we do kind of do like the bare minimum on Amazon. Like we do like maybe 5%, a little bit over what, they suggest is like the requirement to get a Prime Day spot. things like that. We allocate a pretty modest amount of inventory, but where we really go hard is that with all of our brands, we have like a, whatever day, if you want to call it the Hexclad days, or you want to call it the Ridge days, or the Simple Modern days, we run a parallel sale very aggressively on our site along with Prime Day. And we'll run it usually for like a day before and a day after. I think Prime Day was 2 days last year. So we'll run it for 4 days total. And we'll do 2 emails a day for 4 days straight. And it's absolutely blockbuster. I'm not sure what kind of results you saw last year, Jason, because I think you did something similar. But, for us, we saw in the 2-day period of Prime Day, we saw $1,065,000 in incremental sales above our baseline over those 48 hours during Prime Day on our D2C site. That doesn't include anything we did extra on Amazon. And to compare that to like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, that was over a 4-day period. We did $2.6 million in extra sales above our baseline, right? So if you think about it from a time perspective, it's like $500,000 a day in extra sales, where Black Friday, Cyber Monday is $650,000 a day in additional sales. So if that gives you like any sense of scale of how big this holiday is that Amazon has created, it's pretty massive. It's probably the second largest sales holiday that your direct-to-consumer site can run throughout the year. And
Marty, this is so gold. Like, this is so gold that we should, Sean said this on the last pod, but this is actually worth charging for. I was actually reluctant to allow you to say this on this one because it's just giving like the keys to the kingdom away. And as Mike said before, I think people overthink stuff too. And it's like, you didn't even think about, let's just do, let's do Simple Modern Day. Let's do it.
Can I tell you
absolutely
what we do with
murdered July and October, both Prime Days last year. We absolutely murdered it. And it was thanks to you, Marty.
I agree. We do the same thing. But one thing I've learned, Marty, is so if you do it off Amazon, this is tactical now, you can't call it your Prime Day sale, right? Like that's a big no-no to Amazon.
Yeah. I mean, don't use, obviously, disclaimer, do not mention Prime, do not mention Amazon, do not use Amazon assets.
Don't do any of that shit. Just if you're listening, don't do any of that stuff. That's bad. They will come after you. Believe me, I've had it happen. I call it my Prime Time sale. Amazon don't own Prime Time. Prime Time's been around for a long fucking time.
Dion's coming after you.
He's not. He's really not. So yeah, it's that is like such a piece of gold, man. It is. Well, that's more than gold.
Ridiculous.
Thank you, Marty. Mike, do you want to go?
Right,
and
I'll
I
jump
got a
in.
simple one.
This is fairly tactical, but it's something that I've seen proven over and over again. If you have a business that deals with a lot of different variations, for example, like we might have 32-ounce water bottles, we have 20 different colors. When you discount, don't discount across the line of colors, discount a few select ones, because what we have seen over and over and over again is that most people will still pick the color that they want. What you're able to do is spike the traffic, spike the interest, and then people will come in with the sale price is kind of the rabbit. People will come in and they'll still buy the color they want, even if it's not on sale. So this actually works really well with things like Prime Day. Prime Day, yeah, we should participate, but we're not going to put the whole listing. We might have 100 ASINs in the listing. We're not putting all of those on discount. We're putting 15 of those on discount. So we're still getting full margin sales on 85% of the portfolio. And then we're taking lower margins on those 15. And you end up nominally making way more profit than if you didn't participate in the promotion. Incidentally, this works not just in Amazon and an e-commerce context, but it really works in a physical retail context. We were just looking at some data today. We did some promotional stuff at Target a few weeks back, and not only did we see really significant lift, obviously, on the things that were discounted, but there was this halo effect where all the things that weren't discounted, because what it does is it draws people, whether it draws people to your listing or it draws people to the part of the shelf where all your product is, it has the effect of moving their attention. And so this is something that we're using in our favor, where we can participate in more promotional activities without just gutting margins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super
Mike,
smart,
absolute gold. Absolute
Very
gold
smart.
right there, dude. Seriously. Matt, bring us home.
I mean, I wanted to say I have a follow-up question if possible to that, because we do things like that because we're in a similar situation, Mike, where we have a lot of variants. Yep. And if anyone from Shopify is listening, please raise the 100 variant limit for the love of God. What we traditionally do is we'll do discounting different periods of time, even not during sales, to equalize inventory spread. Where if we get too many of a certain size or color, we'll disproportionately do discounts in order to get our forecasting and our purchase ordering in a little bit of a better place. So I'm going to think about both of those now when it comes to future sales reference. I think that's like really good information.
Yeah. And Marty, I'll add one point. What I have personally observed is that there's two ways that discounting can happen, and one's a lot healthier than the other. One is where you're reactive. It's like, oh, we're heavy here, we got a discount. Oh, we're heavy on this listing, we need to get that into Prime Day. And you end up, my observation has been when we get into that reactive, it's a lot of tail chasing, and it's really more about just getting out of stuff. We don't really move the business forward. What we're trying to do is move to more of a proactive, like, okay, Q4, we want to sell a lot more of X. And so we're going to proactively buy more inventory to kind of set up us being more aggressive. And that's where we want to live longer term as a business for margin reasons, and also so that we are pushing the hardest on the things with the most momentum. Like, so simple principle, we want to be the heaviest on inventory in our very best stuff. But typically, if you're not careful, it ends up being the inverse, where you're heaviest in weeks of cover and your worst stuff. And so then all your discounting is not as powerful because it's around your worst stuff. Anyway, it's a great concept.
These are things to think about for sure. Especially, I'm not sure what size your catalog is, but like we have teams of people working on this because we have 4,000. I checked it this morning, 4,062 SKUs. Yeah. So keeping that managed and balanced and loaded and ordered properly is quite a daunting task.
Yeah, I think we're at 6,000 or something like that. So it's a very
finally,
similar.
someone that can understand our pain.
Oh man, yeah, absolutely. We'll have to talk more about this afterwards.
I have 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's almost 3 here.
It's like I got a machine, pods, filters, some other shit. Like that.
Next business venture, like I'm going to be picking your brain, Matt. Like, how do I get it?
Well, I peel a case. I have it's all print on demand, so I don't. It's like they're fake.
You have infinite SKUs.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I want to finish on people because we talked a lot about people, and I'm going to keep mine really simple. Because since we were talking about hiring, I want to talk about firing. And I had this conversation today with a younger entrepreneur here local to me. He's been growing his team a lot, and he's like, he's got a problem person on his team. So look, here is my piece of advice for everybody. How do you know when to fire somebody? That's the question. How do you know when to fire somebody? I have a simple answer. The minute you think about it.
Wow.
A bit heartless, but that shit's going to haunt you. And the minute you think about it is probably the moment that person needs to go. Don't create a crisis though. Like, good God, please don't go around shooting people and like whatever. But it is.
I'm almost scared for Sean to hear this piece of advice later and see what happens. But no, I'm just kidding.
Sean's gonna just like,
that's gonna be like, oh well, Matt gave me permission, so I'm gonna go on a rampage.
I give everybody permission that like entrepreneurs, you have an instinct. We need to trust it more. And
I think it's a big downside for us, honestly. Like, we've not been good at that. We've definitely had where we kept people on way too long. That just created way too many problems for other employees and for ourselves. And we're trying to adapt the mantra of, hire, slow, fire fast. Yeah.
It's hard.
It's tough. Yeah. It's tough. And especially when you're dealing with people, like it's hard to get like the emotional component out of it and just be like, this is business. Like, I find it very difficult. I try to offload as much of the stuff to my COO as possible. Sorry, Alma. I appreciate you. But it's just very difficult things to do, and managing people's hard.
Can I give you the trick to this? So the follow up to like the minute you think about it is the minute you should fire someone. What we've learned is that when we hire people, we let them know that this is actually how we operate. Mm-hmm. We let them know up front that like you're always earning your seat. We are like high performance team, right? And that like we expect everyone to either set pace or keep up. And we have a lot of fun, and we're like, culture's great. Like, we're really friendly, right? But like when it comes to this thing, we owe it to everybody else to be ruthless with who's on the team. So when you hire that way and you set the tone up front, you're less of an asshole because you've literally told them coming in.
Yeah. You're prefixing the conversation and the narrative. Yeah. It's great. It's great advice. Honestly, it really is.
All right, boys. Marty, this has been fun, man. This is like really great to have you on. You're a freaking star. I'm so happy, Jason.
Thanks for having me on. This is my first ever podcast. This is like the most public I've ever done. So I appreciate you guys bringing me out, and Jason invited me.
Yep, you did really awesome. Like you're just like really great shares today. I'm sure everybody's going to find value in this. Before we go, again, thank you to Northbeam for actually like making this all happen. All right, boys, I'll see you in the chat.
All right.
See you guys there.